begins in darkest places. When I fail to be consoled as I recall the days of old. I miss my students' faces. I miss their fun, their energy, and their surprising creativity. I miss the weird group games. I miss disruptive attitudes that could disturb this solitude. I miss the gathering of the saints. I miss consuming meals with teens, examining Time's Wolf unseen. I miss Dave's laugh and Ernie's hugs. I miss new movies with old friends, adventures call to overspend. I miss too many screens and wings with pals. I miss the Cubs on opening day while hoping for October play. I miss my old naivety. The said pandemics lived in history or in a movie's fantasy. I miss the laughter of young kids. But darkness, it chokes their sound and it drives me to the ground. But darkness births my hope because it could not seal the stone. And I look to Jesus on his throne. As Ralph said, in this series of hope, today we're going to talk and we're going to focus on the idea of lament. What is it to lament? To bring up my pain, my anguish before God. Now, lament it's something that is for everyone. So there's kind of an ongoing running joke amongst the staff, specifically maybe between me and Ralph specifically, but it's not just there. Ralph is a thinker. If you know him at all, you know that is true. He actually thinks about his feelings. I am a feeler. Okay, that's where I start, and I feel to think. And so we're very different. We're similar in a lot of ways, but we're very, very different in the way that we approach things and the way that we feel things. I've even joked with friends it wouldn't be great to just turn off my feelings and just use my mind as if somebody could actually do that. So whether you're a thinker or a feeler, lament is a tool that you can use. It is for all of us. Now, one thing that I want you to hear in the midst of talking about lament today as it leads towards hope, if there's one truth that I want you to hear, it's the fact that laments are honest. To lament is to express outwardly an internal pain. And oftentimes that pain, it's associated with loss, with something that we've lost, with a sense of there's something different now, the way things used to be, that relationship, whatever it might be, there's a sense of loss that wraps us up, and we have to then outpour what that makes us think, how that makes us feel, and pour it out. Now, in the midst of talking about lament, I've actually talked about the topic of lament a couple times in the last several years, once at Camp Gormley, once on Ash Wednesday a year ago, and most recently, as Ralph pointed out, in the video devotionals. And each time I always used Lamentations. Lamentations is a great book to look at what it means to lament. But in preparation for this sermon, I felt drawn more to the Psalms. And so I want to just start right off with Psalm 88 for us as we figure out what it means to lament and how honest laments are. So Psalm 88. It says this: Lord, you are the God who saves me. Day and night I cry out to you. May my prayer come before you. Turn your ear to my cry. I'm overwhelmed with troubles, and my life draws near to death. I'm accounted among those who go down to the pit. I am like one without strength. I am set apart with the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, who are cut off from your care. You have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. Your wrath lies heavily on me. You have overwhelmed me with all of your waves. You have taken from me my closest friends. You have made me repulsive to them. I am confined and cannot escape. My eyes are dim with grief. I call to you, Lord, every day. I spread out my hands to you. Do you show your wonders to the dead? Do their spirits rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Are your wonders known in the place of darkness, or your righteous deeds in the land of oblivion? But I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? From my youth I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors and am in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You have taken from me friend and neighbor, and darkness is my closest friend. So, one thing that we see in the midst of lament, and specifically of this psalm, and really of so many laments, is the fact that we must be willing to share our whole selves. Now, if those of you who have seen Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit specifically, this is going to make sense to you. I've got something here in my pocket. So I've told you what it is, and you can tell, okay, it's going to be small enough that it can fit in this pocket, right? So you've got a picture of what it could be, but you don't have the whole picture. Okay, I've shared truth with you. I told you there is something. I haven't lied. I've shared, and yet part of it is concealed, and so you can't know exactly what it is. But I can tell you that it's a coin, okay? And I can hold it here, and it's a coin. So now you know, okay, I know the basic shape. I don't quite know the color, because it could be copper, could be silver, if it's silver. It could be a penny, could be a nickel, could be a dime, could be a quarter, could be $50. There's lots of things that it still could be. So again, I've told you the truth, okay? It's in my pocket, it's a coin, but you still don't have the full picture. You don't know the fullness of what it is. Now, I can tell you that it's a quarter. So now you know, you have an idea. We've all handled quarters before. They're great. I like that it's bigger, so it's easier to hold on to, not lose, like a penny or a dime. But you don't know if it's heads or tails. So I could flip it right now. And you know that I flipped it. You know that it's a quarter. And you have no idea if it's heads or if it's tails. We must be willing to share our whole selves, both sides of who we are. Because God will not heal what we don't present to Him. Which means that we cannot be afraid of our doubts or our grief or our anger. See, their presence in our lives is not an indication of a lacking faith, of a deficient faith, but they're actually necessary for a more vibrant faith, a healthier faith, a holistic faith that sees all parts of me, both sides. But when we hold back, we keep a part of ourselves from God. We keep ourselves hidden. And church, He died to rescue our whole selves. Not just a part, not just the good parts. So that includes our grief and our doubt. And so when we lament, as you see the psalmist laments, he comes before God and he recognizes that God is the one who has the power to do something about his suffering. When we share our whole selves, we come before God because He can do something about it. This honesty, this sharing of the whole selves, this trusting and recognizing that God can do something about our pain. This is done all throughout the Psalms. 1/3 of the Psalter actually consists of lament psalms. And commentators recognize that many of these laments, they're anticipatory of the resurrection. They don't understand, right? It's long before the resurrection, 1,000 years before the resurrection, and yet there's a sense of anticipation of what God was going to do. And to suffer before God takes the power out of our own hands and puts it back into the resurrection. But Psalm 88, it can be hard to see that in the midst of Psalm 88. One of the questions that I had to ask is, why is Psalm 88 in the Bible? A lot of the lament psalms, they tend to have a turn where the psalmist is struggling and is crying out to God, and eventually there's a turn towards hope. But Psalm 88, we don't really see that turn. So where is the hope in Psalm 88? Why is this in the Bible? Well, I believe it is in the Bible for our own darkest moments. When this moment of pain first hits us, when you hear those words, "You have cancer." When you find out that a loved one was in a car accident. When he or she breaks up with you. When you have a sick and dying parent. When you find out that your parents are getting a divorce. In the midst of that pain and that anguish, Psalm 88 says everything that you're feeling and the darkness that you're feeling and the hopelessness that you're feeling is normal. When we are between the pain and the promise, we can know that we're not alone. Now, to be in this space in between the pain and the promise, it's okay to spend time here. A lot of us, we want to just move all the way past it. We want to get here, right, for the deliverance, for the healing, for the hope. But it's okay to actually be in this place between the pain and the promise. And understand that the promise may not be exactly what you expect it to be. So I see pain in my family, and it angers me. I see my dad, who's in his mid-60s, still having to work double shifts at the steel mill to provide for his family, to provide for my niece, who he's adopted as his daughter. I feel frustration and anger at the situation that would leave that there. And I know what it would look like for me in my mind to have that be fixed. I know the promise that I want. And so in the midst of that, I turn to God. Somebody recently asked me, why in the midst of hard things, Ben, do you specifically turn to God? And my answer was, because He breathes life into me. Here in this space, before I ever get there, He breathes life here. See, God comes into this space not just to deliver me, not just to fulfill a promise, but to be present with me. So the resurrection, it regains its power when we come to the cross, a symbol of suffering, and we bring our own suffering there. And we cry out to God. And in the space of that moment, we can hold on to the truth of God's eventual and complete victory over sin, injustice, and death. When He finally just says, enough, and brings to completion what the cross and the empty tomb began. Namely, the reconciliation and the renewal of all things. I heard a story just recently about a young boy, probably about 8 years old or so. And every day he would walk home from school, and he would walk by a pet shop. And he would always look through the window because there was a group of puppies that were inside the pet shop, and he desperately wanted one of these puppies. And so he would tell his mom, can we get a puppy? And if you're a parent, you know the pull of that. You know the hardship of what it means to bring in an animal, but you also know, how can I say no to my son? And so the mother says, okay, let's go get you a puppy. And so they go together, and they go inside the pet shop, and the little boy walks up to where the puppies are. And there's one puppy that's kind of in the corner on his own, separated from the rest of them. And he looks at the pet shop owner, and he says, I want that one. And the pet shop owner says, I don't really think you want that one. Like look closely. Like he's got a limp. There's something wrong with his leg. He's not going to be able to run with you. He's not going to be able to play catch. He's not going to be able to go for walks. You pick one of the other puppies. And at that point, the boy pulls up his pant leg to reveal a metal brace. And he says, no, I want that one. See, what disqualified the puppy from being chosen by everyone else qualified him to be chosen by the boy. And on the cross, my Savior broke himself to qualify us, broken as we are. Your honest brokenness qualifies you to be chosen by Jesus, because he didn't come for righteous, put-together people, but to call sinners and the sick to life and healing. Rachel Held Evans says the difference between a cure and healing is that healing takes time, and it's relational. Lament enters into that healing journey by which God comes close, and he just cries with us. When I was young, as a feeler, oftentimes just long days would get to me. Nothing major would necessarily happen, but there'd just be long days, hard days, and after so much time of just spending myself and just feeling as much as I did, I would sometimes just walk up to my mom and say, Mom, I think I just need a good cry. Would you cry with me? And my mom would say yes. And we'd go and we'd find a spot on the couch, and I would just begin to cry. And then she would begin to cry. We didn't need words, just tears and each other. And I can't tell you how powerful that was, how much love was spoken to me by my mom in that moment, that she was willing to just be close and cry with me. When we're willing to be honest about ourselves and where we are and our own brokenness, our own pain, we begin to see the pain of others. Lament actually has the ability to open us up beyond the world of self. We spend a lot of time focusing on ourself. Okay, one study that I just read actually talked about the Zoom meetings that a lot of us are doing right now, and they can actually be exhausting, and how oftentimes we're feel performance, because even though I'm looking at everybody else, my tendency is to gravitate back and look at myself. And so I feel like I'm performing. But lament takes us beyond the world of self and shows us the world of the other. See, we feel more acutely our own experience. But lament is bigger and deeper than that. Lament is the opportunity to live incarnationally, to enter into the pain of others, to cry with them, and to lament for them. Now, this is hard to do because we're often so uncomfortable with our own pain. We're often uncomfortable with expressions in front of others, especially, of pain, of not having it together, of the questions and the doubt. But I want you to imagine a world where we give people the time and the space to not be okay. And we know that we ourselves are not okay. So we are all not okay together. And that means we're chosen. One of the other things that we see in the psalm is the expression of connecting his body with his spirit. So when we lament, when we choose to actually enter into that process, connecting our body actually helps us to lament. So growing up, I loved going to gym class. I was one of those freaks that loved to go and exercise and run, and I had all this energy, and it was great, and it was an outlet for it. And I loved doing the presidential fitness test and scoring in the top percentage. And when you're younger, the way that you get exercise and whatnot is very simple. The way that you maintain cardiovascular health and all that is really simple, right? So it just starts with jumping jacks, push-ups, wall sits. If you've ever been in gym class and done a wall sit, you know that pain and frustration. I hate working my legs. But as I developed and grew up and grew into my body, and you want to exercise, you start to lift weights. And there is a way in which you can properly lift weights, and of course a way that you can improperly lift weights. And one of the key things actually is focusing on your breathing. So when you're doing a bench press, for example, they actually teach you, as you are up here, and you first lift it off the bar, and you come down, you're supposed to inhale. And then as you push it back up, you exhale, matching that. You connect what's going on here with your breath, with what your body is doing. So as we think about lament and expressing words and feelings, to connect my body with that matters. Throughout the Psalms, we see examples of them doing this, of them throwing dust on their head, falling prostrate on the ground, lifting out their hands before the Lord, rending their clothes, as symbols of what they are experiencing inside. For me, one of the things that I do growing up playing baseball is I throw. When I get overwhelmed, when I get frustrated, I grab my mitt, and this is the actual mitt that I used in high school. It is falling apart. But I will take this, and I will just go find a space. I'll grab a bunch of baseballs. Nowadays, it's probably softball because that's all I have left. And I will just throw. I will put everything I can into the throw, pouring my whole body into it. For me, it's a great way to release myself, to release that anger and that frustration. I'm feeling something, I'm crying it out before the Lord, and then I have to release it through my body. I remember in college, I was heartbroken. And I was the athletic director for my sports club, and we played sports and softball specifically because, we're past the time of baseball. And so I had access to our equipment, the bats and the balls and everything. And so I just went out to one of the intramural fields one night, just frustrated, crying out before the Lord. And I just actually, I hit as hard as I could the balls. And then I would go and chase them down wherever they were. And I would throw them back as hard as I could just to get that out of me. I actually just recently did this last summer, about July. Again, frustrated and lamenting at the state of my heart and the state of my status. Just right over here to Frankfurt Park and just throwing as hard as I could. For me also, it looks like poetry. Even just the simple movement of my hand or even the typing on the keyboard is a way to connect my body with what I'm feeling. So to do that helps to actually show the full self, the whole range, both sides of the coin, and really connect the lament that is going on within me and really putting all of it, all of myself before God. And so when I do that, it's all of me, both sides, good and bad, the trust in God, the frustration, the hope, and the pain. It allows us to more fully express what we're feeling. It doesn't need to be outlandish when you do this, when you connect your body. It can be as simple as breathing. It can be as simple as sitting before the Lord, crying out to Him just with upturned palms. It can be as simple and as quiet as just kneeling at your bed. Feeling anxious and worried, crying out before the Lord, it might be good for you to pace, to actually put your whole self into that anxiety that you are feeling. Whatever it is, you need to find the way that works for you, that is honest for you. You see, in the darkest place, in a garden, in the middle of the night, Jesus was facing his impending death. And in that moment, we see him fall to the ground with his face on the ground, and he cried out in anguish, connecting his body with his spirit. So hours before he would shed his blood for us, he shed his blood in that garden with us. And that gives me hope. God, we thank you for the hope that you offer, that you come close to us in the midst of our despair, that you yourself felt despair, you felt brokenness, you felt pain and anguish. And you are one who is near and is close. So thank you that you are close, that we can hold on to the truth of your love for us in the midst of the pain and the promise. And pray that you would bring us to promise, but ultimately that promise of being close, of being loved, of being chosen, would be the hope that we would hold on to. God, we ask for your Spirit and your great love to overwhelm us. Be close and present with us. In Jesus we pray. Amen.